Welcome back, brothers and sisters. I am Braden. This is Langley Outdoors Academy, the place where we not only talk about what's going on in the gun world, but also how we're going to fix it together. And the content that we're going to talk about today is a sensitive one. So if you have young ones watching, or anyone who's a little more impressionable or sensitive to the topic of suicide, please take your chance now. It's probably in the video for them because we've got to talk about an article from NPR that all of a sudden is bringing up some things that we've been screaming from the rooftops for about 3 to 4 years together on. And on another note, if this is something that is affecting you, the temptation of this, it's not the answer. Reach out. There's lots of things that are available, but understand, we are blessed beyond measure more than any people in the history of the nation to be in this country at this time and have the opportunities that we have. So please, grab some help if that's something that you're struggling with. But that's the disclaimer. If you guys enjoy this content, let me know in the comments below. And of course, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn the notification bell on. And this content is brought to you by Vanish Holsters. They've got a huge giveaway, and I want to show it to you right now, and then we're going to hit this. I've got to tell you about the biggest giveaway I've ever done on this channel. Vanish Holsters is giving away an $80,000 custom Rocky Ridge Silverado for free to one lucky American who buys one of their holsters or t-shirts through June 3rd. Now, this is not your everyday range holster. This is the holster that eliminates the excuse not to carry every day because of comfort. In fact, there's a money-back guarantee based around that comfort level. It fits 99% of semi-automatic handguns on the market, can hold 2 magazines, and is completely versatile in where you actually strap this bad boy up. It has a no-stink material, it's completely adjustable, and it fits up to 48 to 68 inch waist. And in order to have this opportunity to get the truck, all you have to do is enter to win in the link below for $50 off your order as well, and you get a chance for this truck. So check it out right down there in the description box. All right, beautiful people. So as I mentioned in the introduction, we are going into a sensitive topic. Okay, we're about to start. So if you're going to scoot away now. But one of the things that really irks me and has always irked me about what we're talking about is the gun control advocates never address the true problems that we're dealing with in our society to solve any type of problem. It's whatever suits their need in order to achieve their political means. So for example, gun control will never focus on the topic of suicide because they only want to focus on the topic of homicide, even though homicide is 40% of all what they describe as gun violence, and the other 55 to 56% is suicides, which is a tragedy. Again, this is a big deal. But all of a sudden, out of nowhere, I run across this article from NPR saying it's not even about homicides anymore. Now it's about suicides. Let's walk into this because the only thing that I can imagine coming from NPR, which has never shied away from gun control, is that it's an election year. But you guys let me know in the comments. Let's get into this. Suicides make up majority of gun deaths, but remain overlooked in the gun violence debate. This was released this morning. Now, my hypothesis on this is they don't talk about it on the gun control side of the debate because that's quite obvious. That's not something gun control is going to fix. That's a completely different problem. In fact, they even go into some stats here which kind of buttress that point. But they never talked about it on the gun control side because it does not support their gun control, take all the guns, more common sense gun safety. It just doesn't do it, so they avoid it. But let's continue here. When gun violence in America is discussed, people typically think about mass shootings, homicides, or even domestic violence. But in fact, the majority of gun-related deaths in the United States are suicides. In 2023, more than 42,967 people died from gun-related injuries. Over half of those deaths were suicides. This is in NPR. This is not on this channel. I didn't originate this content. I've covered this a lot. But why is NPR a site and a organization that is very fluently versed in gun control talking about points that undermine gun control? It doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. Again, I don't want any of these things to happen, but the fact that they're covering it like this sends up some flags. Let's keep going, and I'm going to show you some more stuff, which is going to boggle your mind, and it really makes you wonder, what's the point of the gun control argument if this is what we're going to publish from NPR? Check this out. Adam Garber, executive director of Ceasefire Pennsylvania, a research group that advocates for stricter gun laws, says big cities have typically had the highest gun death rates, but that trend has started to shift. Last year, York, a small city in Pennsylvania, had a higher per capita gun death rate than Philadelphia, Garber said. It's really everywhere right now. What's going on here? A gun control group is now openly talking about in NPR how suicides are expanding while homicides are shrinking. Now, I'm here to tell you, According to Gun Violence Archive, which is a complete gun control group that is funded by Slate Magazine, a far-left group, even their stats are showing numbers declining, but the only rise is in the suicide portion of the gun violence as they brand it. I don't even think it's considered gun violence personally. It doesn't sound like violence to me. That sounds like self-infliction, which again, I do not want any part of that in anywhere, okay? But this is a really important piece because this is undermining the gun control points. If they're never talking about it, and NPR is saying we don't talk about this, why do we not talk about this? It kind of shines a light on the idea that gun controllers never talk about this. And now a gun control group is cited in this article saying, yeah, it's pretty much everywhere right now. Then why are gun control groups always talking about the safety of everybody and the epidemic of gun violence and common sense gun reform, but they never mention the biggest proportion of death? They're all about solving death, but they don't talk about the biggest proportion of death. Why? That's the important piece. Why do they not talk about it? In fact, look at this. This is coming from Johns Hopkins University, which has a Bloomberg-funded gun control group in it. Check this out. Paul Nestat, a psychiatrist and professor at Johns Hopkins University, is one of the country's leading researchers in suicide and what leads to it. He says, most people don't know how prevalent suicide is because we shy away from the topic in our personal relationships and in the media. When there's a mass shooting or homicide, there's lots more coverage, and of course, those are very tragic. But suicides kind of slip under the radar a little bit. There's not as much willingness to talk about them. I think that's changing. It's becoming hard to ignore as the rates climb. I want you to ask why. Why would, and I'm going to hit this a few times, why would the gun controlling groups who say their main control mission is to reduce deaths by firearm never talk about the biggest proportion of firearm deaths in the United States? It does not make sense on any level unless you have a political agenda that you are trying to achieve by focusing on the smaller percentage. That's what I'm trying to highlight with this article. I am very questioning why this is in NPR, but the fact is it still is. This shines a pretty damning light on the gun control advocacy groups like Moms Demand Action, Everytown for Gun Safety, Giffords.org, how they're always talking about common sense gun reform and taking guns away and doing all these different common sense reforms that they call common sense, but they never address suicides ever. Anyway, I got one more thing for you. We've got some actual percentages. This is interesting stuff right here in a very, very sad way, but listen to what they're blowing out of proportion from the gun portion, right? Most suicide attempts in the U.S. are by overdose or poisoning, things like sleeping pills or Tylenol or opiates, Nesdat said. And yet those are usually non-fatal. Only about 2% of people that make an attempt by overdose die. But firearms, which are only used in 5 or 6% of attempts, are so lethal that if you happen to have access to a firearm, your chance of death is 90%. Understand what they just said in that piece. A majority of them are done by poisoning, and only 5 to 6% are done with firearms. 5 to 6%. I want this to be 0%, again, reinforcing that point. But the gun controllers, when they talk about suicide, they say that there should be mandatory waiting periods and cooling off periods to prevent 5 to 6% when they've got opiates and drugs and all different ways that these people are attempting this action. Do you see what this is? It is so abundantly clear when you dive into the data, when you dive into their talking points, when you dive into their marketing materials, they are avoiding the suicide portion because they don't want to make the conversation around something like suicide prevention. They want to make the conversation around gun control and gun control points. They are foregoing the biggest portion in order to focus on the smallest, in which there are manipulated numbers out of consistent, repeated crime areas, and then they are saying we need gun control across the entire population when this is the biggest problem that we can easily solve without gun control. That's what I've got for you guys. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and I'll see you on the next one. I'm Braden. See you later.